Stacks is an open source way to build apps, also smart contracts, digital assets, all secured by Bitcoin. And with me is Dr. Muneeb Ali, an early adopter of Bitcoin, the founder of Stacks as well. So welcome, Doctor.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So let's just start overall. Tell me about Stacks. Tell me about you and your background and how you came to be the founder of Stacks.
Yeah, so my background is mostly in computer science. I did a Ph.D. in distributed systems at Princeton, and this is where I kind of like discovered Bitcoin. This is back in 2013. So I was really fascinated by the peer-to-peer network that Bitcoin provides and the new types of functionality that Nakamoto consensus was bringing to the world. And I think since then, it's just been going down deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole. So where the need of Stacks kind of like emerges is that, as everyone knows, that Bitcoin is mostly sound money, right? It is not really programmable. And there are other networks like Ethereum, for example, that are more programmable and people can build smart contracts and other types of applications there. So we wanted to explore this idea that what if you could bring these types of smart contracts directly to Bitcoin, because Bitcoin is so secure, so durable. It is by far the biggest ecosystem and brand name. So many people know about Bitcoin. And it'll be really amazing if we could deploy the $1 trillion worth of Bitcoin capital directly into smart contracts, if developers can build interesting new things on top. So that's where the Stacks project started. And it's effectively, you can think of that as a programming layer for Bitcoin, where developers can build any types of applications, smart contracts. And the mainnet for Stacks went live just last year in January. So it's been less than a year. And over the last year, we've actually seen a tremendous amount of growth. There's more than $1 billion locked up in various smart contracts on Stacks. And we're seeing a ton of developer traction. In fact, I think just yesterday, this developer report came out that analyzes the developer traction in the crypto industry. And Stacks basically has anywhere between 20 to 25% of the total developers in Bitcoin at this point.
Yeah, interesting. Because when you think on building on the network, Ethereum comes to mind first, NFTs and things like that, but you're really working it with Bitcoin as well. So how do you see Bitcoin? I mean, you mentioned 2013. That's been quite a ride since then. How do you see the overall cryptocurrency, in particular Bitcoin market right now?
Yeah, so I think we've come a long, long way since then. And in my experience, like these markets are always cyclic. There's a bull market, and we'll see like a ton of interest both from investors, institutional capital, but also developers, right? So a lot of people enter the industry like during bull markets, and then during the bear markets is when a lot of people are basically just focused on building, right? So new stuff gets built, and every cycle, the industry basically becomes a lot more mature. And I've seen like 3 cycles so far, and this one was obviously by far the biggest. Like Bitcoin reached all-time high of almost like 68,000 or something like that, and we are seeing a ton of interest, right? A lot of capital is moving into the industry, and Bitcoin kind of like remains the #1 cryptocurrency. It remains it has the best chance of becoming sound money and the reserve cryptocurrency for the world, right? But just the way it's designed and how decentralized and secure it is. And I think Bitcoin kind of like has solidified that position. And now I think the area where Bitcoin probably needs to grow more is developers building more smart contracts and applications on top of Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. And I think retailers and so forth accepting it as payment, I think would help as well. And one application, although a lot of people like it as a store of value and an inflation hedge as well. So it's been, an interesting thing to watch, certainly this year. So tell me about Hero. What is that? What is the relationship of Stacks and Hero?
Yes, so Stacks is a open source decentralized protocol, right? So think of that as Bitcoin itself. Just like no company owns Bitcoin, Bitcoin is a open source protocol and a decentralized network. Stacks is kind of like that. It is an open source technology. And then there are several companies that work in the ecosystem, and they build different developer tools or services on top of the open source technology. Hero is one such company. Hero my company, we focus on building dev tools and APIs for developers. So I think if people are, for example, familiar with Blockstream, so it's a company in the Bitcoin ecosystem that focuses on building technologies for Bitcoin. So Hero is a company that focuses on building technologies for the programming layer stacks.
And what's an example of Hero in an application where it's being used?
So there are many products that Hero has. Like, for example, there is a Hero wallet. So if people have used MetaMask on Ethereum, where a lot of people are interacting with their NFTs or other types of like Uniswap, decentralized exchanges through MetaMask. So Hero has a wallet where people are doing similar things on Bitcoin now. And then we have developer-facing APIs. So a lot of developers who are trying to do innovative things with Bitcoin, they would basically use our API services. That makes it a little bit easier for them to kind of like get started and quickly deploy their applications.
Mm-hmm. So kind of explain to me, like, how would somebody who kind of knows a little bit about Bitcoin, maybe isn't, a computer scientist that you are, how would they use stacks? Like, how could they use it in their daily lives?
I think for them, it would be very similar to using Ethereum.
Okay.
Right? So I think the high level takeaway for an average user in crypto would be that Stacks is basically Ethereum but on Bitcoin. Right. Uh-huh. So instead of using the Ethereum network, you're actually using the Bitcoin network. So if you believe in Bitcoin as sound money, if you feel that Bitcoin is durable and secure, and you want to use applications on Bitcoin, Stacks is kind of like the way to do that.
Mm-hmm. Now, would there be NFTs on Bitcoin? Any kind of DeFi? Like, where do you see this going?
Yeah, so it all started last year, and they're already Bitcoin NFTs, and they're actually booming. Like I was actually caught by surprise, like how quickly Bitcoin NFTs started taking off. Mm-hmm. And one interesting thing that I noticed was that we're seeing Bitcoin culture being represented in Bitcoin NFTs. So if there are interesting ideas like, the famous Bitcoin pizza, or this idea of like citadels. So all these artists in the Bitcoin community, they're creating Bitcoin NFTs to represent that. Mm-hmm. And there are already marketplaces, and people are kind of like trading these NFTs. And there's a ton of excitement around Bitcoin NFTs these days.
Can you buy a Bitcoin NFT with the Hero wallet?
Yes, you can. Okay. So you would go to a marketplace. There are a bunch of these marketplaces, and then Hero Wallet is how you would make the payment and get your NFT.
What are some of the marketplaces that would accept a Bitcoin NFT?
So there are a bunch of them. One is called stacksart.com. Another is stxnft.com. I think there are 6 or 7 of them, right? So.
Okay. Yeah, because I know like OpenSea is a big one. I think maybe that's just Ethereum, but I'm not entirely sure. They've got a ton of different NFTs on there. So tell me about the benefits of building the apps on Bitcoin versus Ethereum.
Yeah, so I think the first benefit is that Bitcoin is the largest cryptocurrency, right? So it's $1 trillion of crypto capital. Sure, the markets are down a little bit now, so maybe it's 800 billion or 900 billion, but that capital right now is mostly sitting passive. Ethereum is already a productive asset. So around like 22% of Ethereum is deployed into smart contracts already. So there is a really big opportunity for developers to do interesting things with $1 trillion of Bitcoin capital, to build applications and use cases where people can deploy Bitcoin capital directly into smart contracts. So that's the first thing. That is just a much bigger capital base that is currently untapped. And people can use that, right? So and the next thing is that Bitcoin is very durable and secure, right? Like in the sense that the base layer of Bitcoin is very simple, relatively. Bitcoin doesn't change that much. So when people are thinking about building applications that they want them to last for decades, Bitcoin becomes a safer bet, right? Because they know that Bitcoin is going to be around. It's not going to radically change. Basically the risk tolerance in Bitcoin is very different. Like they're very careful about taking risks versus some of the other platforms where they're more accepting of taking risks. So they're more experimental, right? Bitcoin is actually more durable. So people who want to build applications where they don't have a lot of risk tolerance and they want their applications to be stable and be there decades from now, I think they might want to actually go and build on Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm. Now, anybody who's watching this will want to know about the fees. I mean, because some of those Ethereum gas fees are so high that it's really a deterrent, I think, for many people. So how are the fees for the Bitcoin?
Yes, so I think interestingly, the way Ethereum is dealing with their gas fees problem is with the layer twos, right? So a lot of the applications are moving to layer twos. So Stacks itself is kind of like that for Bitcoin, right? So you can do thousands of transactions like in the Stacks layer, and they're just settling on Bitcoin, and you're not paying a lot of fees on Bitcoin, right? So in many ways, it's designed in a way to not so that the users don't have to pay really high gas fees on the Bitcoin main chain.
Yeah. Okay. Finally, where do you see things going this year? I mean, it's a brand new year. Bitcoin as as a use case, and just Bitcoin in general and crypto in general. How do you see things?
So I think historically, like we have seen, the crypto markets, they go in cycles. So I think the really big question now is that have we reached some sort of a mature stage right now where maybe we wouldn't see the kind of downturn that we have typically seen after bull markets before? So I think that's probably the biggest question, that are we going to see a correction like 2018 this year, or are things radically different now? And, maybe we are what people are calling a super cycle, meaning that we have kind of like crossed the chasm and into mainstream, and we wouldn't see those extremely volatile type extreme bull markets and extreme bear markets. So that's kind of like the first question. The second thing that I'm not really, I think I'm like 60% that we'll probably see like a big correction similar to previous years, like previous cycles. And maybe there's a 40% chance that we're in a super cycle. But the other thing that I'm actually much more confident about is that the amount of developers coming into the industry, and same for Bitcoin, like it has actually increased a lot. So we will see a ton of other startups, a ton of other applications, a ton of new use cases being built. And I think that's actually very, very bullish. And that's happening anyway, because if you just track the amount of recent capital and investments that have happened in the crypto industry, like there's a ton of fresh capital that just moved in. Those companies would be hiring like crazy, and they will be executing ruthlessly against their roadmaps, regardless of what's going to happen in the trading markets.
Yeah, very interesting. It does feel like 2021 was kind of a pivotal year for the industry, where it went more mainstream. So thank you so much, Dr. Ali, for joining us. Very interesting.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Okay.